بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to the Fiqh class. Today, inshallah, we're continuing the discussion of the book of sales. And we've reached a very important issue, which is interest, or as it is mentioned in the book, usurious sales, البيوع الربوية. What we will discuss is the things that incur riba. And the beautiful thing about the book is that Ibn Rushd, he classified the things to things that have riba and things that don't have riba. He said things in which neither excess nor delay is allowed. There are things that you cannot have excess. Means $10 for $10. It cannot be $10 for $12. And it has to be hand to hand. You cannot say $10 and you'll give me back $12 later. Along with their corresponding underlying cause. Then we have things in which excess is allowed, but delay is not. Gold for silver. Of course, if you give 1 gram of gold, you will not take 1 gram of silver. There has to be excess in silver. But can you say later? It has to be hand to hand. Then we have things in which both are allowed, delaying and excess. And then we have things that are considered as one category and things that are not considered as one category. Grains, are they all one category or they are different? Wheat is different from barley. Money, is it one category or US dollars are different from Canadian dollars? And so on and so forth. So basically, this is the discussion of the book of interest. So we will take the first type, which is things in which neither excess nor delay is allowed, and the explanation of the underlying cause. What's the reason in those things that makes it prohibited to have excess and to have delay? And then things in which excess is permitted but delay is not. And then after that we will have what is allowed, both of them, what is in both of them are allowed. And finally, the property which is considered one species and property that are considered different. So open the book, please. This is very important. That's why I want to read it from the book. Open the book, please, page 158. Open the book, page 158. You will eat or you will read?
I'll read.
Go ahead. From the beginning. Where is your book, Mateen? Huh? Why? What's the purpose of having a book? To keep it at home? On the shelf? La ilaha illallah. Read.
Chapter 2, Usurious Sales. The jurists agreed that usury is found in two things: sales and that which is established as a liability through sale, credit, or other transactions.
And that which is established through liability. That's what we call in Arabic dhimma. Okay?
Riba, which is incurred as a liability, is of two kinds. First is that
What are the kinds of riba? Isn't it one kind? Why two types? Isn't it only having 100 for 150? What's the other one then? This is what we call, okay, read.
First is that about which there is an agreement, and this is the riba of the period of Jahiliyyah, which is prohibited, as they used to stipulate excess in loans and then delay the period of payment.
Yeah, that's riba nasi'a. That's the famous riba, which is excess for delayment. And that's why it's called nasa. What's the meaning of nasa? Innama nasi'u, delaying.
They used to say, grant me further delay and I will increase it in the amount.
Yeah, and that's what is haram. Like, if you pay after 10 years, the rate is 15%. If you pay after 20 years, the rate is what? 20%. That is haram. Why? Because you did not finalize the sale. It's open. Delay more, pay more. That is haram. Okay.
This is what the Prophet ﷺ meant when he said at the farewell pilgrimage, take heed, verily the riba of Jahiliyyah is annulled, and the first claim of riba I cancel is that of Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib.
Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ prohibited that clearly in front of everybody. And he started with his own family, with Al-Abbas radiallahu anh.
The second kind is loss for hastening the period. This is controversial, and we will describe it in what follows. The jurists unanimously agreed about riba in sales that is of two kinds.
Actually, even the second one, it became unanimous agreement. There is no disagreement on riba al-fadl. Both of them are haram. There was a slight difference at the time of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, and he himself acknowledged that it is haram also. Okay.
The two kinds which are delayed, nasa'i, and stipulated excess or
tafadul. That's the second one. Riba al-fadl or tafadul. Like 1 pound of good quality dates for 2 pounds of low quality dates. It's the same type but different amount. It is haram.
Except what has been narrated from Ibn Abbas about his denial of riba in excess, because it is narrated from the Prophet ﷺ that he said, there's no riba except in delay.
There is no riba except in delay. That hadith means there is no riba, only one type. But this hadith is not approved. Okay.
The majority of the jurists, however, maintain that riba runs in these two types, as it has been established from the Prophet ﷺ. The discussion of riba is covered in 4 sections. Section 1, things in which neither excess nor delay is allowed, along with their corresponding underlying cause or the illah. Section 2, things in which excess is allowed but delay is not. Section 3, those in which both are allowed. Section 4, things that are considered as one category and those that are not. Section 1, identification of things in which neither excess nor delay is allowed and the explanation of the underlying cause. We say the jurists agreed that excess and delay, neither of them is permitted in any category. From among the categories mentioned in the tradition of Ubadah ibn Samit.
This hadith, it was repeated several times. You should memorize it by heart. Read the hadith. We took it in fiqh earlier. We took it in fiqh of hadith earlier, and now it's repeated again.
The tradition of Ubadah is that he said, I heard the Messenger of Allah ﷺ prohibiting the sale of gold for gold, silver for silver, wheat for wheat, barley for barley, dates for dates, salt for salt, except through equal measure and immediate exchange. Thus, one who increases or causes to be increased has taken riba. This tradition is explicit in the prohibition of excess in exchange of the same category of these things. With respect to the prohibition of delay in these categories, it is established through more than one tradition, and the best known among these is the tradition of Umar ibn al-Khattab.
Yeah, again, the tradition of Umar radiallahu anh was repeated several times. Ha wa ha. What does it mean? Ha wa ha. Hand in hand, hand to hand, right away.
Umar ibn Khattab, who said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, gold for gold is riba except from hand to hand, when exchanged immediately. Wheat for wheat is riba except from hand to hand. Dates for dates is riba except from hand to hand. Barley for barley is riba except from hand to hand. The tradition of ibadah includes the prohibition of excess in exchange within one category of a thing, and also includes prohibition of delay in the exchange of two different categories out of these with the permission of excess in them.
Okay, we have two principal ahadith. Those two ahadith. One of them said gold for gold is what? Riba, except hand to hand and what? Equal. The other hadith is what? Gold for silver is what?
Gold for silver.
What's the condition? Immediate. But can it be different? Yeah. So what are the rulings established from this? First, we know that gold for gold is interest. You go to the jeweler, you give him old jewelry, you give him 50 grams, and you take back 35 grams of new jewelry, that is riba. You delay, that is riba. This is agreed upon because it came clearly. Now the issue is, what about beyond that? The Prophet ﷺ mentioned how many types in the first hadith? 6. What about beyond these types? Does riba incur or no? If you say yes, what's the effective cause? What's the underlying cause? If you say no, why? That's the discussion now. The discussion is not about the hadith, because the hadith is clear. The fiqh, the job of the jurists, is beyond that, especially in our time with money. The Prophet ﷺ did not mention US dollars. He did not mention banknotes, currency. He mentioned gold and silver. So if someone came and said there is no interest in any transaction that we do now, buying with mortgage, that's not riba, because we are dealing with banknotes, with paper money. How do you respond to him? This is very important. Read.
This is laid down in some of the authentic versions of this hadith, where after the prohibition of excess in these 6, it is stipulated, sell gold for silver as you like, but from hand to hand, and sell wheat
as you like. What does it mean, as you like?
Whatever amount.
Whatever amount is it. It doesn't have to be equal. Go ahead.
And sell wheat for barley as you like from hand to hand. All this is agreed upon by the jurists except the case of wheat for barley.
Yeah, that's the only case where they differed. For a reason. Wheat for barley, is it from one type or different type? Some scholars said it is the same type. If it's the same type, then can you exchange it in different weights? Or it has to be the same amount? Same amount. If you say it is different, then you can have the different amounts, but with the condition still, in either way, that it has to be hand to hand. Okay, continue.
They disagreed about what is besides these expressly mentioned 6 categories. Some, including the Zahiris, said excess is prohibited only in each one of these 6 species, and what is besides these, in it, excess is not prohibited within the species.
That's the opinion of the Zahirites. So they say the Prophet ﷺ mentioned specifically 6 types. We don't go beyond that. Otherwise, there is no need to specify 6 types.
They also said that delay is prohibited in these 6 species, irrespective of the species being similar or different.
Okay, again, that's their understanding.
This is a matter agreed upon, that is, the prohibition of delay in them together with a difference of species, except what is narrated from Ibn Ulayya, who said, when the species differ, delay and excess are both permitted, except in gold and silver.
But that's not a regarded opinion. Move on.
Thus, they have considered the prescription to be related to the essence of
Next,
these 6.
the majority of the jurists.
The majority of the jurists of the provinces agreed that, although it is a particular prohibition, it is extendable to other things generally, but they differed about the underlying general meaning on the basis of which these species were prohibited.
This is what is very, very important. Once you establish the underlying cause, you can make the analogy on any other type. And that's where scholars differed. What's the reason of interest? What's the reason that there is interest in gold and silver? Food, barley, wheat, dates. What's the reason? Okay.
That is the meaning of the illah, of prohibition of excess and prohibition of delay. The cause finally agreed upon by the astute among the Malikis in the prohibition of excess in 4 out of 6 species is the exchange of the same species of food that can be stored. It is further said that it should be in the same storable category even if it is not food.
Okay, so what's their underlying cause? Food that is what? Stored. So any type takes the same condition, the same characteristic, it is food, it is stored, then what? There is riba. Okay, let's take the types of food that were mentioned. What are they? Wheat, barley, salt, dates. What about grape? Was it mentioned? Can you store grapes? Raisins. Is there riba in raisins?
Yeah.
Yes. Why? Again, you fit the category and it makes the same condition. It is riba. According to Zahirites, can you exchange green raisins for black raisins with different amounts? Yes. You see the difference? This is what is very important. That's the opinion of who? The Malikis. The cause of is what? Storable food. Okay, go on.
The meaning of being stored is that it should be stored quite often. Some said that...
Okay, because you say even raisins, I cannot store it for more than 1 year. As long as it is possible to store it for some time. Not like 2-3 days. Because now we can store food, even apples. Some people, they keep the apple in the refrigerator for months. With all this wax, with all this. That's not what we mean. By itself, it can be stored for some time, months. That is the effective cause.
The illah, according to them, in gold and silver for the prohibition of excess is the exchange of the same commodity, as well as there being the most representative currencies and measure of value for non-durable property.
Okay, repeat it again. This is important.
The illah, according to them, in gold and silver.
Now they mentioned the 4 types. That's not about gold and silver, because gold and silver is not food storable. They mentioned about the food, the 4 types. What about gold and silver? What's the reason?
The illah, according to them, in gold and silver for the prohibition of excess is the exchange of the same commodity, as well as there being the most representative currencies and measure.
They mentioned 2 things. Exchange of same commodity, and then what?
Most representative currencies.
Most representative currencies. That's what is important. According to them, anything that represents what? Currency becomes effective cause for riba. So according to them nowadays, the US dollars, is there riba in them? Yes. Yes. Because at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, what was the currency? Gold and silver. No, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was dinar, but it is gold. It was not minted like we had later. Actually, to the extent that some Malikites, they said, even if people were to deal with leather, if instead of banknotes it became leather, like black leather or cow leather, it becomes the subject of riba. Kagid bil kagid. They mentioned that as long as it is representing a currency, it becomes riba. That's their effective cause. Okay.
This is the illah that according to them is called deficient.
Illa al-qasira. We took that in usul al-fiqh.
As it is not applicable to things other than gold and silver. The illah of the prohibition of delay, according to the Malikis, in the 4 expressly mentioned commodities is being tasteful food and the characteristic of being stored, even though they are not of the same category. If therefore the categories are different, excess is permitted, but not delay. And excess is permitted according to them in perishable food. That is, when the category is the same, but delay is not permitted. The permission of excess is because of the characteristic of not being stored, and it is said that storability is the condition of the prohibition of tafadul within the same species. The prohibition of delay in food exists because it is a food that can be stored, and we have said that the characteristic of food is always an illah for the prohibition of delay in eatables.
Okay, so now if you say it is storable food and there is riba, then why you are allowed to exchange it with different amount as long as it is hand to hand? That is the response that they give. You are allowed to give it hand to hand in different amount because it is perishable, or it's not perishable, it is stored. But since it is food, you cannot have it delayed. It has to be hand to hand, but it is allowed to be different amounts. Next.
The illah of the prohibition of excess in the four species, according to the Shafi'is.
Now we come to who? Imam Shafi'i. Let's see how different he is from Imam Malik.
The illah of the prohibition of excess in the four species, according to the Shafi'is, is only the characteristic of food along with being of the same category. While the illah,
what is it again? Food. As long as it is food, then what? Can you exchange it with different amount? No. No. So what is different? Now let's compare the Malikites and the Shafi'ites. What's the difference?
Food and storable food.
Storable food and food. Okay. Why? The Shafi'is, they say the Prophet ﷺ gave you 4 different types to give you 4 different things. Wheat and barley, they represent the essential food. Date, they represent the fruits and other types of food that are not essential. Salt represents the
seasoning,
spices, the condiments, and all these things. Desserts. So he included all types of food in 4 things. That's according to the Shafi'is. Okay, go on.
While the illah of prohibition of delay is the characteristic of food, even though the species is different, as in Malik's view. The illah according to the Hanafis.
Let's see now the Hanafis. What's the illah according to them?
Is the same in all 6 species.
All 6. Now we are still talking about 4, which is the food. Regarding Shafi'is and Malikis, we excluded Imam Malik. We said the money according to him is what is currency. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah said in all 6 it's one thing. What is it? Let's see.
The illah according to the Hanafis is the same in all 6 species, and it is either measure or weight along with the equivalence of species.
Measure or weight. As long as this is weighed, so it is 2 pounds, 1 pound, it is what? Riba. Then isn't everything is weighed? No. We have things that are what? Counted. If it's counted, then there is no riba. If it's measured or weighed, then what? There is riba. According to Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, in all 6 types. That's the illah. Let's see. Do you weigh the currency now or you count it? If you count it, there is no riba. But if you weigh it, it is riba. And according to the Hanafis, even now, doesn't the money represent what is weighed, which is gold? So it is riba. Move on.
The illah of delay in these species is a difference of species except in brass and gold, as there was consensus on the point that delay is permitted in them. Ash-Shafi'i agreed with Malik about the illah of the prohibition of excess and delay in gold and silver.
Actually, it is the opinion of the majority of scholars. Shafi'is, Malikis, and even Ahmad, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. That what is the effective cause in gold and silver? It is what? Thamaniya. The currency, or making it a price for things.
That is, that they are fundamental currencies, and and a measure of value for non-durable property.
Yeah, if something is destroyed, what people pay you? Do they pay you 50 pounds of salt or of dust, or they pay you money? What kind of money? If it's US dollars, then this US dollars become subject to riba. That's the opinion of the majority of scholars. So eventually Malik and the Shafi'i rahimahullah, they agree on gold and silver. They differ on what? Food. According to Imam Shafi'i, food, period. According to Imam Malik, storable food. According to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, what? Measured or weighed. Okay. Because again, this is very important. Now, someone, a layman, came to you and told you, tell me a hadith prohibits exchanging $10 for $5. Tell me a hadith prohibits for me to take $10,000 from the bank and paying it back $12,000. Break it down to him. What hadith? The Prophet ﷺ never mentioned $10,000. What did he mention? Gold and silver. I'm not dealing with gold and silver.
Those were the currencies at the time. Exactly.
So you need to prove to him that the illah is the currency. Okay? So it is not, don't think that it is easy. Just because we say it, you have to prove it, because you may have someone who is Zahirite and he tells you, unless you give me an evidence, I will not. And there are people, to the extent that there are some people say there is no zakah on the money that we have. There is zakah only on gold and silver, because that's what the Prophet ﷺ stipulated zakah on. He did not stipulate zakah on cash money. I have in the bank $20,000, I will not pay zakah on it. Prove to me that I have to pay zakah. Okay.
At that time, gold and silver were coins, or they were like, was there like just, you know?
We have dirham and dinar.
It was like coins?
Dinar equals 10 dirhams. Yeah, it was like coins.
Should I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
When the species is the same excess, when the species is the same, excess is prohibited. The Hanafis, for purpose of measure, consider a quantity which is measured customarily. The ahkam specific to dinars and dirhams will be taken up in the book of Sarf.
Yeah, book of Sarf, exchange, currency exchange.
Here, however, the purpose is the elaboration of the various schools of thought of the jurists about the underlying causes of riba proper in these species, and the discussion of the evidence relied upon by each group. We say those who restricted the riba to these 6 species belong to either of 2 groups: those who rejected analogy, that is the derivation of underlying causes from words, and these are the Zahiris, and those who rejected qiyas shabah.
Shabah. Yeah, because someone, you say by means of qiyas, currency is just like gold and silver. The Zahirites, do they approve qiyas or no? There is no qiyas. Come on, the Prophet ﷺ specified them. How come you say there is qiyas? So if you deny qiyas, you will deny interest in money, cash money.
Because in this case, whosoever has linked the cases not expressly covered has done so by the means of qiyas al-shabah, not qiyas al-illah, except what is related of Ibn al-Majishun, that he considered here the value and said that the underlying cause of riba is the protection of wealth, meaning thereby corporal property.
Yeah, so only what is wealth. It is not riba, according to Ibn al-Majishun, it's not subject to things that are possessed, like corporal. It is for what? Values. But this is the opinion of him only, not the Malikis. Okay.
Qadi Abu Bakr al-Baqilani, on the other hand, considered qiyas al-shabah as weak and the qiyas al-ma'na as strong. He therefore used the latter, not finding qiyas al-illah as useful. He linked only raisins with these 6 categories, as he found raisins to be similar in meaning to dates.
Yeah, if you see, they are very strong. Raisins very similar to what? To dates. Even some scholars regarding khars, doesn't the date become dry? So it transforms from rutab to what? to dates. Same thing with grapes. They become dry and they become what? Raisins. So it's very strong analogy.
Each one of them, I mean the users of analogy, has evidence for the derivation of semblance, shabah, that he has taken into account for linking the species not expressly covered by the text with one of the expressly mentioned four species. The Shafi'i said about establishing the illah of semblance used by them, that when the hukm...
What's the illah of the Shafi'is? Food, period. So what's the evidence for them? Let's see.
The Shafi'i said about establishing the illah of semblance, that when the hukm rests on a derived word or noun, it indicates that this root meaning from which the word has been derived is the illah of the hukm, as in the words of the Exalted, as for the thief, both male and female cut off their hands. Since the hukm rests on a derivative sariq, then the hukm seems to be related to theft or sariqah itself, bearing in mind and
Sariqa. Any theft generates this punishment, cutting off the hand. Same thing here. Any food generates the riba.
bearing in mind and taking into account the tradition of Sa'd ibn Abdullah, in which he said, I used to hear the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying,
it's actually Ma'mar ibn Abdullah.
I used to hear the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, food for food, like for like.
Okay, so in this case the Prophet ﷺ made it clear that it is not only those four types, it is what? Food, period. So, based on this, if I tell you I have a coupon, now there are students in universities and they may get coupons for food, and you have a lunch coupon and I have a dinner coupon, and you say I will exchange dinner for lunch with you, is that permissible or haram?
Is it a buffet? Because then you get different proportions.
It is food for food. Can you do it or you cannot do it?
Is dinner going to be more than lunch is the question? Is it going to be same? Or will it be different?
Well, even if it's the same, no, if it's open, you will eat differently than I will eat. According to the Shafi'is, can you exchange? No, according to the Malikis, it's not storable, so can you? Yes. You see? That's a very simple case.
But then, like, could you go from...
But with the Shafi'is, you're not exchanging food, you're exchanging
What?
value? I don't know.
According to this, for all scholars, if you exchange property or anything else which is not food,
Yeah, of course. Car for car. Can I exchange two Nissan cars for Hummer, for one Hummer? Of course. Nobody said no. Can I exchange two pens for one pen? Yeah. These are counted. These are not what? Weighed or measured, or gold or silver. Okay, go ahead.
The Malikis, however, added to the characteristic of food for the rule of riba either one more characteristic, the characteristic of being stored, according to Al-Muwatta, or two characteristics, that of being stored and of being an essential nutrient.
Yeah, some Malikis, they added to being storable, not any storable food, because there are many foods that could be stored, but only the storable food that is what? Essential food. Essential. Like what? Nowadays, what we could say that it is essential for most people to eat? Rice. Is it stored? It is stored. It is food. It is essential food, so it is riba.
And that is what was preferred by the jurists of Baghdad. The argument in the derivation of this last illah is that had it been the purpose of the lawgiver to stipulate food only as the illah, it would have been sufficient to indicate only one of these four categories in the text.
Yeah, now what do you respond to this? That's the argument of the Malikis against the Shafi'is. They say, if the illah is food only, period, then why would the Prophet ﷺ mention four different types? He would have said food and that's it. It's a strong argument, right? Because why you add to the words as long as one is sufficient? So there has to be extra thing, not food only. Let's see.
As a number of them have been mentioned, the intention is to indicate the meaning implicit within each one of them, and meaning found in all is the characteristic of being stored and of being essential foods. The lawgiver indicated through wheat and barley all food grains that can be stored, and indicated through dates all sweet things that can be stored, like sugar, honey, and raisins, and indicated through salt all condiments that can be stored and used for curing food. They also said that as the underlying meaning of riba is that there should be no misappropriation and that property should be protected, it becomes imperative that this be in the means of sustenance, and these are the essential foods. The reliance of the Hanafis in the consideration of measure and weight is that the Prophet ﷺ tied permissibility to a similarity in kind and a similarity in quantity, and he tied up prohibition to a similarity in kind and a difference in quantity. This is evidenced in his ﷺ directive to his official to Khaybar, as in the tradition of Abu Sa'id and others, except measure for measure from hand to hand.
Who was his official in Khaybar? No. Sawad bin Ghaziyah radiyallahu anhu. Do you know who's Sawad? The one that the Prophet ﷺ told him, Istaqim, Sawad. And he stabbed him, he hit him, and he said, it's painful, O Messenger of Allah, I want retaliation. His official means not the leader of the army. Yes, the leader of the army in Khaybar was Ali radiallahu anhu. But that was later when the Prophet ﷺ sent the officials to collect the zakat, to collect the sadaqat. It was Sawad bin Ghaziyah. Okay.
They were therefore of the view that quantity, that is measure and weight, is effective in the hukm like the effectiveness of kind. Perhaps they argued on the basis of traditions that were less well known, but in which there was a strong emphasis on the consideration of measure and weight. Among these ahadith thus narrated, there are some which included the categories occurring in the hadith of Ubadah, but it has also an addition stating that these are likewise measured and weighed.
Okay, they say, the Hanafis say, that was stipulated that it is measured and weighed. This came in addition to the narrations. Although some of them are weak, but it is what they call an endorsement or strengthening to their opinion.
In some other traditions, they narrated it is stated measuring and weighing are likewise. This matter then is explicit only if the traditions are authentic. However, when the matter is pondered over...
Okay, however, now here comes weighing the evidences. From who? From Ibn Rushd. Now he will, after he made all the arguments for all scholars, let's see what he chooses, what he is going to tell you.
However, when the matter is pondered over from the aspect of meaning, it becomes evident, Allah knows best, that the underlying cause determined by them is the best of causes.
By who? Which jurists? Hanafis. Hanafis. Although he is what? He is Maliki. Let's see.
This is because the aim of prohibiting riba is to avoid the excessive injustice implicit in it, and that justice in transactions demands an approximate equivalence. And therefore, when it becomes difficult to achieve equivalence in things of differing natures, dinars and dirhams were set up for their valuation, that is, assessment of their values. The things differing in nature, that is, those which cannot be accurately weighed or measured with fairness, are related to each other proportionally. I mean the ratios of the price of a...
You see what he is telling you? If the measurement is possible, if it's the value, then that's the reason. Because the purpose of the Sharia in prohibiting riba is injustice. That's the reason why the Sharia is prohibiting riba. So whenever there is the value, it has to be equal value. If the value is not achievable, you cannot measure the value, then you have to resort to what? Weight and measurement.
Okay. The example of this fairness is that if a person exchanges a horse with dresses, then the ratio of the price of the horse to horses should be the ratio of the price of dresses to dresses. Thus, if the price of the horse is 50, then the price of the garment should also be 50. It is so even if the number of a commodity is to be a multiple. Like, for example, the number of garments priced as 50 is 10. The difference in number of these goods with respect to each other is then a necessity in a fair transaction. That is, a fair equivalence of one horse must be 10 dresses. The case of things...
Okay, if we say that this is justice, while it is different, one horse should be one piece of garment. But when we find equality is what? One horse for how much? 10. So that means the measurement is what counts here. What is equal to one horse, which is worth 50 dirhams? The equivalent of garments of 50 dirhams also. If one of them is 10, then we need what? 5. Here we exchange one for how much? For 5. And it is not riba. It is the fair justice. That's what they are trying to say. Yeah. Here 1 for 5 was not made what? Riba. Was not made riba.
Even one
Because why here? Why? They are things that are what? Counted. Go on.
The case of things measured and weighed is not so.
Is not so. Okay. How is it then? Let's see.
Because they are not exactly dissimilar in characteristics, and their uses are similar, and there is no real necessity for one having one species to exchange it for the same species, except by way of luxury.
Yeah, you see? So there is no reason why you take 1 pound of dates and exchange it for 2 pounds of lower quality dates. Only what? Luxury. So here there is injustice. So it has to be what? Exact, equal in measurement, which is the weight here.
Fairness is achieved by equivalence in measure and weight, there being no preferences in utility. Prohibition of excess in these things prevents transaction in them, as their benefits are not different, and transaction is necessitated only when benefits differ. Therefore, two illas prohibited excess in these measured and weighed things: first, to ensure fairness in them, and second, to prevent extravagant transactions. In the prohibition of excess in dinars and dirhams, the underlying cause is readily apparent. Their purpose is not profit, but the valuation of other things that have necessary benefits. Malik has related from Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib that he used to consider the underlying cause of riba in these 6 species as measure and the characteristic of food, and that is an excellent meaning of food.
As food is.
And that is an excellent meaning, as food is a necessary ingredient of the essential commodities of human beings. It appears that the preservation of property and prevention of saraf, extravagance, is more important in what is an essential commodity than in what is not. It is related from some of the disciples of the companions that he used to apply the prohibition of riba to those species in which zakat is imposed, and according to others it is utility, that is value, being mal, and that is the opinion of Ibn al-Majishun.
So, what's the conclusion of this discussion? What is the effective cause of riba? What is the effective cause of riba? Because now people are dealing with what? Money. One decision will make all the money that you have equal what? Nothing. It will become only paper. It will become maybe even used as a paper towel. So we may have something else, new thing, plastic. So what's the ruling on that? When can we have consistent ruling that whenever we have these characteristics, it is riba? No response? Well, it's not easy to digest. As I told you, the book of finances is difficult, the book of sales. Maybe after you read it again and again, inshallah, it will become clear to you. Yes?
Can you clarify a little bit more the Hanafi opinion?
What's the Hanafi opinion?
What is the illah?
The illah for them, they said, it's what? In principle, they looked for the purpose. The illah is achieving justice. In things that could be weighed, that is the reason. Weigh or measure, because you could measure them. So any excess becomes what? Riba. In things that you cannot weigh or measure, it is what? The value. That's why it is permissible. No one would say 1 horse for 10 clothes is riba. Why? Because the value is the same. So it should be the value for things that are not measured. That's basically their argument.
So this entire discussion is only applicable for riba al-fadl, right? The other riba is very clear. You give a loan, you get more money. It's clear riba.
What do you mean?
We said there are 2 types of riba: riba nasiya and riba fadl. One is the known riba where you give money for delay and more money. That's clear riba.
Yeah, but both of them are applied to those types. And again, the discussion is about what? Things that both of them are prohibited, or one of them, or neither one is prohibited. So in regards to money, in regards to gold, neither one is allowed. Silver, neither one is allowed. Cash money, what is allowed and what is not? But according to who? Yes.
According to the Hanafis, then 2 pens can be exchanged for 1 pen.
According to all scholars, not only Hanafis. All of them.
2 pens?
2 pens for 1 pen. 2 cars for 1 car. It's permissible.
No. What I'm saying is it's impermissible according to Hanafis, right?
According to the Hanafi, why?
Because the value of 2 pens is, say, $5, and the value of 1 pen is $2. So how can we exchange 2 pens?
No, they made this analogy as to tell you the reason for other things. Which is, for measured things, it is measurement. But for counted things,
Then they use value for that?
they use value, but not necessarily to tell you that you have to achieve the same value. But you believe that this is justice, that 1 for 3 is justice. But that does not mean 1 for 2 is haram. It should be 1 for 3.
But you still do 1 for 2.
You still do 1 for... No. You still do the value for what? For gold and silver.
Only for gold.
Yeah.
See, did everybody agree that when you exchange different commodities, there is no riba?
What do you mean, different commodities?
I mean, if I exchange 2 different things, irrespective of delay or the value,
Yeah.
there is no riba over there. If I exchange...
Yeah, like 2 shirts for trousers.
So everybody, majority agreed on that?
Yeah, there is no riba. With other conditions of sales. Like if I agree with you that I will give you 1 trousers, 1 pants, and you will give me 2 shirts. I did not give you, you did not give me. That's haram. Because this is delayed in both, according to the other conditions. Yeah.
So is that why when you buy a house from the owner and you delay the installments allowed?
Yes. Here, because this is payment now. This is payment. When you buy from the owner, he is free to put the price he wants. So you can buy it with installment, with extra price, instead of paying upfront lower price. That is permissible, as long as you agree that the payment is $150,000 paid in 15 years. But if he tells you pay cash, it will be $120,000. That's permissible, because this is different than taking a house from a third party and the bank is the one who is financing. You take from the bank and you give back the bank. That's haram. Okay, yes.
According to the Malikis, you can exchange currencies.
You can?
Is that right? You can exchange currencies.
You can, but are they different or the same?
They're different.
If they are different, you can exchange them with different amount, but they have to be what? Hand to hand. Hand to hand.
But you can't take...
if they are the same value, it is currency, just like gold. It has to be hand to hand and equal in amount. So, yeah. So if we say, let's say US dollars and Canadian dollars, they are the same type. If you say they are the same type, then it doesn't matter the value. 10 US dollars equal 12 Canadian dollars. It has to be 10 for 10.
So dealing in currency exchange is not allowed then? Because
why?
If it's future trading, most of it is future trading, then it's not allowed.
No, because you go to the bank and you give $10 and they give you, or they tell you, you take it when you travel. That, yeah, if that's what they do, this is haram, yes. If they don't give you hand to hand, it is haram. But usually what happens, there is hawala, transfer.
Yes.
In transfer, now there is an issue here. That's what used to be known, even at their time earlier, it's called saftaja. Saftaja. They are giving you what? A document of this hawala, just like the check. So they say, actually, the transaction happened hand to hand. But taking possession or owning in hand the thing did not happen here. But you took a document of it. Is that enough? Still, some scholars say no, it is haram. Until now, I know some scholars say money transfer is haram. What do? And I know one of them personally. He goes to the bank and he makes the money transfer and he tells them, give me the money now. They give him the money, $10,000. He gives them back and then they do the transfer. Because he says it has to be hand to hand. You see? But other scholars say, no, it is permissible. Money transfer is permissible because it just happened hand to hand. You took the note. You took the document. Yeah, there are many issues actually. That's why it is beautiful topic here. But sometimes you may find it complicated. Yes.
Has there been any modern research about the different? There have been a few conferences in the last centuries.
Yeah.
About the values of different currencies.
Values of different currencies. Yeah. What about it?
We used to tie the dollar down to the gold standard.
Yeah.
And then
in 70s that was cancelled already.
Yeah, I'm sure that would definitely affect these rulings, right?
Yeah. Because some scholars still believe that you cannot exchange any currency with different amount. It has to be the same amount. $10 for 10 riyals. Unless if you go back, dollar stands for gold and riyal stands for silver, then yes. But even this, now, again, it's separated. It became its own value, the currency. How banknotes started? How they started?
Based on gold.
Based on gold or silver. But later, that was cancelled. Now, if you go to the bank, they will not give you in exchange to this paper gold or silver. But that's how it started. It used to say that this is the note of this amount of gold. You go and they give you back gold. Then it became difficult. People did not want to carry gold. They carried this and they used to exchange it, and here comes the money. There has been many researches in conferences, because what happens next is more complicated, like the loans. I took from you $10,000 10 years ago. Now, after 10 years, do I pay you back $10,000 or more? $10,000 10 years ago would buy you 5 kilograms of gold. Now, it buys you only 2 kilograms of gold. That's an issue that is discussed. What do I pay you? $10,000 or extra? This is an issue that is discussed.
What is the majority opinion on that?
The majority opinion that as long as the increment or decrement does not exceed 1/3, you pay the exact amount.
otherwise you pay the increased amount?
Yeah, because that's what's justice. Justice is to pay the value. What's the value of $10,000? So Zahirites uphold this opinion that paper money is not included. Yeah, that's their opinion, and definitely their opinion is not. What do you think? Is it a good opinion? Then you will not pay zakah, then you will not, you can deal with any transaction you want, and there is no riba, and so on and so forth.